Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Are you surprised that this war is still going on in Ukraine?
Not at all. I mean, neither side has any incentive to compromise in any way. Putin can't. For him, compromise or negotiation is a sign of weakness, and weakness would be putting him at risk of losing his power. And he's committed so many gross atrocities, murders, rapes, destruction of territory, that the Ukrainians have no willingness to negotiate either. And so both sides are going to fight on. Neither side at this point has a decisive military advantage, and so this is just going to grind on and on and on. And I can imagine we'll be sitting here a year from now and having the same conversation.
How long do you think it will go on for?
I think it'll go on until one side collapses or the other side collapses. There's a victory, a Russian victory.
How does that happen? Because Russia's not going to collapse, and the West is not going to allow Ukraine to collapse.
Well, the Russian military could collapse in Ukraine. I mean, it's basically physics. If the Ukrainians can physically push them out of their country, then that's the collapse that I'm referring to. And on the other side, if, for example, we stop supporting Ukraine, we stop giving them military equipment, if there's a change in government in America, let's say Donald Trump becomes president and says, I don't want to support Ukraine anymore, and there are voices on the far right in America that are suggesting that, that could lead to the collapse of the Ukrainian counteroffensive.
What about, we spoke to you, I think, in January. You said the cleanest, safest and simplest way from deterring Putin from invading Ukraine is to go after his money.
Yeah. Well, we didn't do that. We only did that after he invaded. So sanctions can be very powerful, either as a deterrent, which we didn't use, or as a punishment, which we are using. But the punishment is, it's not going to change his mind at this point. If we had gone all guns blazing, let's say 6 months before this actual invasion, he might have said, oh, actually the West is serious. He didn't think we were serious. He didn't think that we would lock arms all together and impose these sanctions.
We didn't think he was serious, though, did we?
Well, I think we did think he was serious.
We didn't think he would invade.
I didn't even think he would invade, but he's always been a serious criminal and a serious murderer. I mean, I've been shouting from the rooftops for 10 years, this man is much worse than you think. You should try to do anything you can to contain him. But he invaded Georgia, we didn't do anything. He took Crimea, we didn't do anything. He carpet bombed Syria, we didn't do anything. He poisoned people in Salisbury, we didn't do anything.
Well, we did.
Hardly. I mean, we didn't sanction a bunch of oligarchs. We kicked out a few diplomats. They were replaced by other diplomats.
Talk to me about how effective you think sanctions have been, the ones that have been implemented, albeit, as you say, after the event.
Well, there are several different categories of sanctions. We've frozen $350 billion of Russian central bank reserves. That's a lot of money that they could have used for their war effort that they're not using. We've gone after 40 of the top 118 oligarchs, and hundreds of billions of dollars is now frozen from that, which is, in my opinion, some of Putin's money. We have stopped a bunch of Russian banks from engaging in financial activities in the West, which means they can't finance their war that way, which is helpful. But the big problem is there's one huge elephant in the room, and that's oil and gas. Every day, Russia sells to the West and to the East somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion a day of oil and gas. And that money is used to kill Ukrainians. And until we can figure out what to do with that, this war will go on, or I should say Putin can finance this war into perpetuity.
What about funds being channeled through China, as is the allegation?
Well, the bigger and more serious allegation is that China is going to start supplying lethal military equipment to Russia. Russia's running out of arms.
Yeah.
They're in such bad shape. Russia used to be a big arms exporter. They're in such bad shape that they've had to go to the only two countries that are so sanctioned they don't care, North Korea and Iran. If China were to enter the game and give them weapons, that would be a game changer for Russia. That would be terrible for Ukraine, and it could lead to the Third World War.
What is the likelihood of that happening?
Well, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken brought it up at the Munich Security Conference last weekend.
Yeah. Chinese representatives in Moscow just yesterday.
Yeah. So now, on the other hand, China is a mercantile country. They survive off of selling stuff all over the world to us and many other people. And if they all of a sudden are doing this nasty sort of, killing of Ukrainians, if we see a Chinese missile, an unexploded missile on the ground in Ukraine, that's going to lead many people to call for sanctions, call for economic countermeasures. And does Russia really want that? I mean, does China really want that when that's their economy? I mean, what's in it for them other than poking NATO, America, UK in the eye?
What do you think will happen?
I think this war will just carry on and carry on and carry on. I just don't see...
But do you think China will help Russia with lethal weapons?
I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, I couldn't have imagined China doing even the idea that they were going to do this, and I just hope not. But it's impossible to say. One can't predict the way a dictator is going to think.
Fascinating stuff. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.